Welcome back to Grit Gym, guys. Well, Grit Gym headquarters anyway. Today we have a guest. I've been following this guy for a very long time. This is a kind of a big moment for me to be able to even talk with the guy. Shared emails back and forth. Never been able to converse like we are about to, but you guys are in for a treat. Tony Gentilcore has worked with some of the biggest guys, biggest coaches, I shouldn't say that, in the industry. Super knowledgeable guy, really, really smart. Thinks outside the box, loves busting down the status quo, and pulls off a very good Mr. Clean costume. But he's here with us today. He has a gym in here. Are you in Boston? Is that where it is?
Well, it's Brookline, but it's basically Boston. Yes.
Yeah, basically Boston. So for us Iowans, it's Boston.
Yes, Boston University is like a half a mile from where I'm sitting right now. So it's really? Like my gym's in it's in an area called Brookline. It's where Tom Brady lives. It's Boston. Yeah, we're not neighbors or anything. Not like he knows me, but but no, it's Boston. So it's a great city.
That's cool. If you guys have comments or questions or anything, write those down. Tony will be able to see them, and we can respond to them as the show goes along. But Tony, can you guys just give them a little bit of backstory on you, kind of like how you got started in the industry or who you work with now? You can kind of go wherever you want.
I make the joke, and it's probably been told way too many times, that I watched a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies back in the 80s. So I watched a lot of Predator. I watched a lot of Commando. I watched a lot of Terminator. I think there's a lot of guys my age that was kind of like their impetus into lifting weights and strength and conditioning in particular. And I was also just a very active kid. So every sport imaginable growing up. And you and I were talking beforehand. I lived in the middle of nowhere, New York, like corn pastures and dairy farms everywhere. So I played a lot of sports to keep myself occupied. That led into an active lifestyle, which kind of like asking my parents for my first weight set when I was like 12 or 13. And then I got the bug pretty early. And that eventually transpired into when I was done playing collegiate baseball, what do I want to do with my life? And it was like, well, I could go teach, or I could go wear sweatpants to work every day. So I chose sweatpants as an easy decision. And I worked as a commercial gym, corporate gym, personal trainer for the first 3 to 5 years of my my career. The first 3 of which were just outside Syracuse, New York. And then I met an individual named Eric Cressy, which I'm sure many people are familiar with. And he and I worked together at a gym in Connecticut for about a year. And then we both moved to Boston and had our careers kind of blow up there. We eventually, along with Pete Dupuis, opened up Cressy Sports Performance in 2007. And I was there up until 2015, so about almost 2 years ago. Year and a half, 2 years ago, I left. And I have my own little studio here in Boston now. So that's more or less like the elevator pitch of my career. Not super excited.
You're super humble about it too, though, because you've influenced it. Like you and Eric together. I mean, Eric gets a lot of the credit for doing that, but I think both of you have influenced an entire industry along the way. I mean, there's a lot of people hanging on what you guys say, and you guys broke down a lot of the kind of minutia and bullshit that is around the fitness and sports performance industry that people they still don't like to acknowledge it. They still like to hate on it. It's really
well. I think we got in on we both kind of started our careers at a time where just right at the line of when social media and blogging, writing articles became a thing. So when I did start my career, which was 2002, Facebook didn't exist, Twitter didn't exist. The internet was still kind of sort of. I mean, it was a thing, but it wasn't like what it is today. And I think which then when we did open up Cressy Sports Performance, that was right when social media and smartphones and all that stuff started blowing up, which obviously helps get our message out. I think a big reason why I myself, I can't speak for Eric, but I'm pretty sure he would agree with this, that a big reason why I started writing and putting more information out there was that it would influence more people. So when I work with a person one-on-one, now I do more group training, semi-private training. But back in the day, it was like, I would work with 5, 6, 7 individuals a day. Whereas when I write an article about deadlift technique or shoulder assessment or core myth or anything like that reaches hundreds, if not thousands of people, depending on the platform. So, that was my impetus for doing it. Like why I decided to do that. It wasn't to, make more money or to, blow up my ego. Like I legitimately wanted to help more people. And I think Eric and myself, along with guys like Mike Robertson and Mike Boyle, Krista Scott Dixon, Jen Sinkler, Nia Shanks, like these are all the people that started writing early in their careers. And we got in just at the right time where it was easier to become relevant. Now everyone's trying to get a piece of the pie, and it's just, I don't envy young professionals going into the industry now trying to make a name for themselves. I mean, you still got to, do the work and put in the effort, and eventually, I think anyone who lasts 3, 4, 5+ years in the industry is doing something right. But certainly, I think using the writing, and the blogging and social media in the right way is definitely another avenue to get your name out there more as well.
Yeah, I like what you say about it's giving me a playback here. But it's like what you say, like putting in the work.
Yep.
It's because right now a lot of people they want to write a lot about fitness, they want to write a lot about exercise, and they want to do all the social media thing, but they don't go ahead and read all the sciencey books that are super annoying to read and read like stereo instructions, and they don't actually get their hands not get their hands dirty, it's probably wrong, but actually put in the work with a client. And so they talk about scapular winging, but they've never actually had a person whose shoulder blades flare out no matter, like they get into a plank position, they can't keep their shoulder blades, and they've never actually worked with somebody, so they have no like kind of knowledge of it or experience with it. It's kind of interesting how simple they make it.
It goes both ways. I mean, you have the people who do read everything, and they read all the pertinent books, like they read Shirley Sahrmann, they read Gray Cook, they read Stuart McGill, they dive deep into the research, but yet they don't coach anyone in person. So there's that. And then you have the people like, I saw it a lot, it's the commercial gym conundrum where, you work in a commercial gym amongst a bevy of other trainers, and they're doing stupid shit, and they don't read anything. Like you bring up the name Stuart McGill, they're like, who, what, who's that? And I'm just going to be like, what the fuck are you, like, how is it possible you don't know this name and you're in this industry? So it goes both ways, and I think there's a little bit of entitlement, I think, I don't want to play like the old ornery strength coach card, but I think there's a little bit of entitlement in the industry nowadays where people, they just think they're gonna set up an Instagram account and a YouTube channel, and they're gonna just start raking in the money and getting clients. Whereas like, no, it doesn't really work that way. Like you need to develop or build some kind of career capital. Work with clients over the course of several years, build a network, and actually gain some experience. And only then is really going to kind of click. Like I joked, I think last year, when I opened up my facility, like I produced my first t-shirt, right? And I was like, I'm 15 years into my career and I figured it was time to make a t-shirt, and then there's people who are in the industry for more than 2 months and they're writing their first ebook and they're doing t-shirts, and it's like, you don't know, you can't even coach a squat. Like, what are you doing? Like, so it's definitely a nice, there's definitely a balance that someone has to figure out as far as like the reading and the continuing education, like that, of course, is very important. But also the real life, it makes no sense to have all this knowledge and not be able to apply it to a real live individual. So, I think I think the cream rises to the top no matter what. I think the people that we all respect in this industry are people that, they've done the work, they have the experience, and, unfortunately, it's just a battle of patience. Like I get asked all the time by young fitness professionals, like, what do I have to do to get to your point in your career? And I'm just like, well, I'm 15 years in, so talk to me in 15 years. And that's a hard pill to swallow. I mean, it's not a sexy answer. unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. I don't know how any other way to put it.
Yeah, but I think what you said up front was just like you just cared about people and wanted to put out good information.
Yeah.
You just wanted to help people. Like I think that's number one. Like so many of these people, I meet people all the time. They're like, they'll go, you know what makes us different? We care. And I'm like, dude, everybody cares. Like there's nobody in this industry that wouldn't do this if they didn't care. Besides, people care about people. They just do. It's like almost, you could contend that it's just inherent within us to care about.
Yep.
But like, do you care enough to improve your knowledge? Do you care enough to go to seminars? Do you care enough to, do you care enough to do 1 hour a day of self-development of some kind? Like how many books did you read last year? And they're like, well, I read a couple fitness magazines. I'm like, then you don't care.
Yeah. I remember I like to tell the story often. Like when I first moved to Boston, I worked at this swanky club right in the city. Sports Club LA. It's now Equinox. Equinox bought them out, but it was like this big, beautiful palace fitness place, and it was like, it was beautiful. And I was one of maybe 70 trainers. It was an insane amount of trainers. 70. Yeah, it was crazy.
Not 7, but 70.
70. There was a lot of trainers. It was a big facility.
Yeah.
So, I remember having a conversation with one of those trainers who had been there for a while, and he was a bright guy. Like he obviously knew his anatomy, and like he was, practiced what he preached. He was in good shape himself. And I remember him carrying around Kendall and Kendall's muscle book, muscle testing. So he knew what he was talking about. But then he was like, yeah, I don't really read anymore. I've learned all I need to know. And I just want to be like, you're a douche. Like, I mean, you have guys like Mike Boyle, Dan John. I would put myself in this camp. Not that I would put myself at the same level as them, but you have guys that have been coaching for 20, 30, almost 40 years who are always trying to learn more, admit when they're wrong, changing their ideas on this. Like, I think that's pretty cool. And that I think anyone who wants to be very successful in this industry, that's the type of mentality they have to have. Like you can't just be, you can't be complacent and just doing. I mean, I look at programs I wrote last year, and I'm like, whoa, I don't, what was I thinking? Let alone 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So
yeah, and
I think Eric wrote about that before. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
No, it's just easy to be embarrassed about that and be like, oh my God, like I can't tell people that my program was bad a year ago because it's only a year later. But that's testament to how much you learned, how much you grew, how much like the Ali quote, the man who is the same 50 years or 30 years from now, or the man that's the same at 20 as he is at 50, wasted 30 years of his life or whatever.
Oh man. Yeah, I think that's another thing too. Is like it's a lost art to say I don't know or to admit when you're wrong. I think. Yeah, I say that all the time. Yeah, for some reason in this industry, like that's frowned upon. And I say I don't know all the time. I feel like a moron still. So I mean, I'd like to think that I'm someone who knows what they're talking about, and I'm pretty well versed in the industry, but. I feel stupid all the time. Like I read an article from Samsung, I'm like, well, why didn't I think of that? Or oh my God, I'm an idiot. But I think I mean, having that little bit of humbleness, I think is a good thing. Like, I think I wish more people would have that approach and not just think like, I just don't like egotistical people. Who are like, it's my way, you're wrong if you don't do it my way. Like you're an idiot if you don't do this. And I'm just like, I just lose a lot of respect for people in the industry that's how they roll. I just don't roll that way. I just unfortunately
because really, what are you doing? Like you do a really thorough assessment process. I do a really thorough assessment process, and I know people that don't do anything. They're just like, they just shove people in, and to me, even with that assessment process, all I'm able to do is get a bunch of data and then make a really educated guess on what would be the best approach for that person. Because ultimately, I don't know. I mean, no matter, usually when I make a really hardcore say, like everybody needs ankle mobility. I remember doing that one time, and like 2 weeks later, somebody came in that could practically touch their big toe to their shin. Yeah, it's just like, okay, this person doesn't need more. Like I was wrong. You know? Reality usually comes back and gives me a good quick kick in the ass.
Yeah. No, my wife has a good saying about that. I mean, you had her on a few weeks ago.
Awesome.
But she'll say something to the effect of like, it's just information. So like when you are doing an assessment, there are a million and one different ways of using assessment to glean information, to get information. And that's all it is it's just information. Like you don't have to do this. You know, if you see A, you don't have to do B. Like, you know, if anything, like you said, it's like, you know, we try as competent coaches to make sound choices as far as like our exercise selection or the proper correctives, or if we see, you know, wonky movement, like, you know, we hopefully might like use this corrective to clean it. But I mean, I'm changing my programs all the time. Like I've yet to write a program where I'm not scribbling something out, because I mean, there's times where I underestimate people and just be like, they might come in on day one and they're crushing this exercise, and I'm just like, okay, I missed that. Like let's and there's other times where I'm a bit overzealous, and it's just like, I mean, I won't say that. I'm not going to be like, oh man, you're really doing a horrible job with that exercise. Let's do this instead. Like you have to be like, oh, you know, let's try this over here instead. Like you have to, I mean, that you have to have a little bit of a feel as a coach, so they don't feel like a piece of shit. That but it is your fault, my fault. Like I'm the one that wrote the program. If anything, I'm calling myself out. Like that, you know, I chose the inappropriate exercise. But there's yet to be a program that I've written that has not been changed to some capacity in the 4 weeks that my programs run for.
Yeah, which like just gives more like the cookie cutter workout that everybody does that you can pull off of Google or whatever. Not saying Google writes bad workouts, but like it's just like right there, like you have people, you're changing programs. You're a seasoned pro in this department. Like program design is probably one of your top skills. Assessments are probably one of your top skills, and yet you're still crossing things out, changing them as you go.
When it comes to program design, like I mean that's a pretty big beast. Like that, like program design is like massive, right? And there's all this theory, and there's all these different approaches. And I remember something that Nick Tumnello talked about, where he's like, you know, oh well, you know, we have all these assessments that we do. So there's NASM, and then there's PRI, and then there's the FMS, and all these different assessments that people use. But then you're writing the same you're having your clients do the same exercises anyways, right? So why are you doing these assessments? And there is some truth to that. Like, you know, like I am a strength guy. Like I like getting my clients stronger and moving well. And what am I going to have people do? I'm going to have them deadlift. I'm going to have them squat. I'm going to have them push. I'm going to have them pull. Yeah. And I take a very simplistic approach. I mean, when people come in and look at my programs, there's nothing fancy about what I write. And it's very, honestly, it's very vanilla, to be honest. I mean, then you know, where it becomes a little bit more individual is like the accessory movements, you know, based off, you know, technique flaws and where they're missing lists. But then going back to the original thing that Nick was talking about assessment and like program design, like, well, why even do an assessment? You're just going to have all your people squat, deadlift, what anyways. Well, my counterpoint to that would be like, well, I use the assessment to figure out what variations of those movements I'm going to have people start with, right? So some people's starting point is going to be a goblet squat. Others might be able to do a back squat. Like there aren't many people that can walk in on day one and do a barbell back squat. Great. I mean, I'm confident that I can coach them into it, but you know, I'm not going to like force it down their throat if it's not there. Let's goblet squat. You know, and we talked about before where a deadlift, you know, that could be a kettlebell deadlift. It could be a trap bar deadlift. It could be just a basic hip hinge. You know, so I use the assessments to figure out the variations of those movements, and then that goes into my program design.
Yeah, we do. Like, I completely agree. Like when I'm program designing, like I never want to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
I want to try to improve upon
Why make
what we
it
already.
harder? No, why make it harder?
Yeah, exactly. And then like the other thing is like if you give people the right exercise, like you give them the right variation of the right exercise. So like you taking the squat, for instance, like you give them a back squat and you're gonna grind your face into the floor trying to get them to learn that exercise if it's not right for them. Whereas you give them the goblet squat and they pick it up in like 10 seconds.
Yeah,
It's like you give them the right variation, everything goes well. Which one was better? You needed a training effect.
Yep.
We need a training effect in less time. Bam. Like that was stupid trying to work your.
Like I think a lot of us early in our careers, and I was too when I first started reading T Nation and Dave Tate and Christian Thibodeau stuff. Like we're enamored by the cool shit, like adding chains to our squats or box squats, or doing pyramid schemes and all that jazz. Like that's cool and like that's great, but really it really comes down to just hammering the basics and doing those well as a coach. I think the good coaches make program design look pretty boring. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, if you look at a lot of the people that we look up to in the industry, like they aren't doing many fancy things. Like it's their programs are actually very, very boring, but those are the ones that work. And right. If anything, I just want my client. All this comes down to like building success with my clients. So the earlier I can get them feeling competent in what they're doing, right? So my goal as a coach, especially when I start working with new people, isn't to throw the kitchen sink at them and like say, yeah, we're going to back squat, do this, do that, and then it's just a walking ball of fail. Like it's just not gonna happen. They're honestly like they're not going to stick to it, and they're not going to stick with me. So the more competent I can get them with their program, and more success I can breed right out of the gate. Goblet squat, a chin up, band assisted chin up, a push up elevated, whatever. Especially if I work with females, like I love to crush chin ups with my female clients, right? So anything I can do that gets them, yes, thank you. Anything I can do to get them to feel successful and that they're kicking the shit out of their program, they're actually doing some work. Then that's just a win-win all over the place.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and especially like I have this strange like kind of intrinsic thing to try to get more women lifting. Like I think most of the time, like if you looked at like 5 years ago and before that, I was trying to like mostly try to get males in the gym. But like I look at females have been pushed out of the weight area of all these big box gyms with the dude machismo nonsense. With something that could have been extremely beneficial to them. Like I think like it's arguable that women could have a more profound effect from strength training than men could. Yeah, like
it's gotten better, of course. I think in the last 10 years, CrossFit has definitely helped making barbell lifts more accessible to that demographic. And I think especially, I mean, this goes back to when I was at Cressy Sports Performance. Like, I think one of the reasons why we did get a lot of female athletes and female clients was we didn't make it a thing. Like, we didn't make it like males. You're a male, you're female, so you're going to get these drastically different programs, and we're going to be over here doing girly stuff. We didn't make it a thing. It's like, no, you're here to train, and we're going to train. They're doing the exact same stuff that all the guys were doing, that all our pro athletes were doing, and then it just wasn't a thing. So I don't know. I'm sure there's probably some psychological term for that, but I wish Lisa was like right here and be like, oh, it's so and so. But I can't agree anymore. I feel like there's a strength training and working with female clients. Like I honestly actually prefer working with female clients a lot of times. I
agree.
They're
tough as nails.
Number one, they're very tough. Number two, there's less ego. Like they want to do stuff correct. Like if I tell them to take weight off the bar, they're not going to take it as like a stroke at their ego. Like they're going to be okay. They want to do it. They want to do it well. They want to do it right. And I just like the idea of kind of like deprogramming them. I mean, I'm a little bit different. Like most of the people that come to me already know what they're going to get themselves into. So I don't really have to like convince them to deadlift. They already want to deadlift. But on the off chance that I do get somebody who is completely new, has never heard of me, and just like was just recommended to me from a friend or whatnot. I love that just when that switch turns on, when they start doing things that 4, 5, 6 weeks down the road that they couldn't even sniff when they first started, and they just get it. Like it always happens. It's almost inevitable. And I never really talk fat loss or aesthetics or anything like that. I was like, no, we're gonna train. We're gonna pick a performance-based goal, chin up, X amount of push-ups, squatting X amount of weight, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And miraculously, a lot of those aesthetic things just happen automatically. Like we don't have to like program for it.
Seriously.
I love it. We should high five.
I completely agree. Like when you see the woman that comes in and started out on the heaviest band that you have for chin-ups, and all of a sudden then she rips off 2 a year later. And she's been working for this whole time. Or she breaks 200 pounds on the deadlift, and it's the first time. And she starts doing, like, there's plenty of females at Grit Gym that do out deadlifts many of the males that are just starting out. And but they've been programmed with this idea that only lift 12 pounds, never lift more than 12 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's ridiculous. Like you bounce the 40-pound baby across your knee and you can't pick up, more than 12 pounds. That's bullshit. And like the kind of the takeaway from that, like the taking away the power from the person. Like, do you think that a woman is so weak and feeble and fragile that she can't be strong? Like, it's absurd. Like, lift more than 12 pounds.
Yeah, it's So yeah, I mean, battling that is very rewarding. I think is like because eventually there is a little bit of a light bulb moment, and it's a beautiful thing when it happens, where they just kind of marry themselves more to increasing weight on the barbell and seeing that go up, and just challenging themselves a little bit more. And like my job as a coach is to help them figure that out. Like I hate it once. I just want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to be fitter. And, I have to kind of peel back the onion a little bit more. And like, what does that mean? Like, what does fitter mean to you? Like be a little bit more specific.
Right.
So, but then again, it's what's that, Adam?
I said, like, getting clear on it. Like, what's the ideal scene? Like, what do you want? Like, do you have a 3-year-old that you want to throw up in the air as high as you can? Or do you want to climb Kilimanjaro, or like what's the what do you want in the strength training to do in the rest of your life? Because it has to have some carryover. Like why would we do it if it didn't improve the experience of your life?
Yeah, and almost always like just getting stronger is going to improve their life in almost all facets. And that is subjective. Like I'm not there to tell them what strong is. Like I'm not saying you got to have a 300-pound deadlift and then you're strong. Like there's other feats that I can't do that I would consider strong that don't entail like 2 times body weight squats or anything like that. But generally speaking, getting people stronger is usually never going to be a bad thing. Usually good things are going to come from that. Like, and then, like I said, tangentially, like the aesthetic stuff, the fat loss, the more abstract goals that they might have tend to kind of fall into place either way, because now they actually have a purpose for their training, and that's really that's really the thing I'm after, is just like some semblance of purpose. Like, this is why I'm going to the gym today, to work towards this goal. This is what my program is designed for, to attack this goal. Once someone has that, it's like it's game over. It's like it's amazing.
Everything else kind of takes care of itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it is like that's one of the most. I would say that's probably the most rewarding thing when that light bulb comes on for somebody, when they really figure it out and like what it does, and or they have that story that they come back to with, like whatever it is. Like that's like this huge kind of, I don't know what to call it, but intrinsic.
Yeah, and honestly, like if I have like Wu-Tang radio blaring at the studio and I have a bunch of my girls deadlifting, like that's fucking awesome. Like that to me, like that's a cool job I have. That I'm like, okay, we're just playing protect your neck. We're blaring that out, and you guys are deadlifting it. My job doesn't suck. Like I just think it's pretty cool just to breed that culture. I mean, culture is such a powerful component of the process that I think, like, you know, when like you have your place, I have my place, that people don't really comprehend when they're at a commercial gym. Like I always kind of encourage people to, if it's just one day a week, like find a gym where you're around other like-minded individuals. And it could be CrossFit, it could be a powerlifting gym, it could be whatever. Just even if it's one day a week, just get out of your comfort zone and go train amongst people who are stronger than you, move well, and will just push you. It'll make a big difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And it makes it, like, it's so hard to push yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like when I'm in like a kind of a metabolic circuit or whatever you want to call it, kind of like an interval type thing. When I'm by myself, like, it blows. And I consider myself like a super like physically tough person, and I hate it. But I get around to the people, and all of a sudden it gets a little bit easier.
Yep.
Yeah, and other people say the same thing. Like, I don't know if you've ever had a client, they're going through a circuit at the end, and they're like, "Will you just do this with me?" Yeah,
I've done it before. Yeah, I mean,
I'll get down there.
I usually, in the back of my head, I'm like, "Fuck." Like, damn it. Like, I like,
yeah.
I remember when I was at CSP and I did the strength camps one day a week. I did it on Friday mornings. And there oftentimes when I would jump in on like the finisher, the participants loved it because, I mean, you know, I mean, if anything, it just proves that I'm invested in it as well. Like and that's a whole other conversation we could have down the road. But, you know, one of the where I really, if ever, program something that I haven't done myself. You know, that component of program design that I think is important, because I think you see a lot of people who write these programs and you actually do the math on it is like, you can't get this done in like 4 hours. Like what are you doing? But jumping in on workouts or finishers or some kind of metabolic circuit with clients, like they love it. Like I think, if anything, it breeds a little bit more of that culture, you know, and it gets them a little bit more jazzed up too. Because if they beat you, then they're like, ha ha ha. Like,
So far, I've only had one kid client that he could match me on the deadlift.
Oh, okay.
I've only had it one time, but I remember when he did it, and I was just like,
it sucks, right? Damn it.
Yeah, he was like 19 years old, and I was just like, oh man, that.
Yeah, but I love it when I don't do it off. Like I rarely do full workouts with clients.
Yeah.
But it has happened. Like sometimes it just more often they don't care. Like I'm still coaching them, and if anything, they actually prefer it because then they're like, cool, like I'm gonna work out with you. Like that's, you know, it's kind of like,
oh cool.
You know, but I try not to do it often because I mean, obviously they're paying for a service, and I don't want them to think that I'm, you know, not respecting. I'm not respecting the but I know there's a few coaches I know that every now and then do work out with their clients, and I think it's kind of a cool idea. Like, and I think Dan John talked about it before in the past too, where you have this idea of intentional community where it might just, and I'm thinking about doing it myself. I have to ask Lisa because it'll be an extra day at the gym, but just setting aside like a window of time where you're there at your gym, and then people can just come in and say, hey, today I'm working out from 1 to 3. Come on down if you want to come down. You can work out with me, and we'll just get after it. Like I think that's a very easy way of building a pretty cool community as well. I remember when I was down in Australia. I did a workshop down there, and at the facility that hosted me, that's exactly what they did on Sundays. They all trained together on a Sunday morning, and then after the fact, they would go down the street to like this really sick breakfast place and just order these ginormous omelets. And that's such a cool way of like just getting everyone together on the same page and building that community. And honestly, it's definitely going to breed a lot of loyalty. And keep people invested in and like just continuing to work with you down the long road. Like you don't have to charge money for everything. It's kind of like the bigger point here. Like sometimes just, you know, being a good human being and just a cavalier guy, like, hey, I'm just going to train and we're going to get after it. And, you know, then then we'll go eat some dead animal flesh. That's cool too.
It's interesting you say that. Like, you don't have to charge. We actually, the way that we do it, we just make everything all inclusive, so that it incentivizes people to show up more, not less. Because if you pay per time, I just look at all it, like how we used to do it, where it's like, I'm going to give you $50 and then you get an hour. They get, like, what happens at Christmas time or when they want to go on a vacation or they want to do that, like, you get cut out first, and that's the one thing that they should keep. So it's like, let's just make it all inclusive. They can cover as many times as they want to incentivize them. And then we can play with the price structure, you know what I mean? So that it's just it's just easier that way for the people that are involved.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's cool. But any other? I always say that I'm going to finish these at 1. I never do. I never.
Well, we get passionate about certain topics, so it's bound to happen.
Any other like words of wisdom that you want to leave with people, or parting thoughts?
I can't think of any. Like, I think I dropped a few like tidbits of good quotes here and there. So no, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I also have baby brain. Like, I'm like sleep deprived, so I'm like I can't think straight as it is. So
yeah, your new dad, aren't you? Yeah. But, well, where can they find you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, home base, TonyJencourt.com. That's my blog. That's links to all my articles and podcasts and resources and speaking engagements and stuff like that. So anything, cat pictures are on my website, TonyJencourt.com.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And Twitter, what's your handle there?
Oh man, what is it? I think it's Tony Jencourt 1. There's another Tony Jencourt out there. Actually, it's funny. His wife actually follows me. Like, she's into fitness, and he's like some kind of like big league computer programmer. But he lives out in San Francisco, I think. But yeah, there's another Tony Jencourt out there on Twitter. So I had to go with Tony Jencourt 1 on Twitter. But yeah, I have way more followers than he has though. So
awesome. Well, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy.
My pleasure.
Hopefully we can again soon. What's that?
Yeah, that was my pleasure. It was fun.
Awesome, man. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Guys, if you can take the time, please slap the share button and send this out to everybody. There's tons of really good stuff in this. Tony dropped some bombs here. Really appreciate him being here. Thanks for you guys for being here too, because without you, we don't have much of a show. But anyway, thanks, guys. We will see you on Monday. Thanks, man.